At a total cost of just over $2,000, the topping LA90, D90, and A90 makes for an incredible stack, both in its measurement capability and its listening impressions. I think these are all phenomenal devices. Now I stacked them all together here, and I'm going to tell you how I would recommend using them if you are going to get them and where you can cut some costs. I'm also going to talk about some of the cons of the system, and yes, even some of the best measuring equipment in the world has some cons. So the first thing I want to talk about is getting the absolute clusterfuck of cables figured out in the back. I actually found a company on Amazon called CESS, and they make a specific cable that I was really looking for to make the system work really well and be like clean and like kind of well put together looking in the back end. And that was an RCA to 1/4 inch adapter, specifically a short one. Now this is also able to not just look very clean, but also allowed me to use XLR for the headphone output and the RCA for the speaker output, which I'm fine with compromising. Another workaround for this is running XLR out of the A90 into the LA90, but I think that the way that I have this now allows me to fully utilize this in multiple setups. Let me explain why. So you obviously have the DAC, which is the digital to analog converter, which is the interface for the computer to the audio system, right? It's going to convert that signal into an analog one for the LA90 and the A90, which are dedicated amplifiers. The LA90, this top one, is a speaker amplifier, and this bottom one is an A90, which is a headphone amplifier. I have notes on both of these in a second. Now the DAC is the D90 SE. I actually don't recommend getting the SE. I would recommend getting the LE. You'll save about $100. It won't come with MQA, but nobody really gave a crap about that anyways. So LE is the way to go. Now, to be perfectly frank here, I don't think you need to run balance into either the A90 or the LA90. I think that the performance from the RCA inputs versus the XLR inputs is identical, especially because on the back end where you have your headphone output and your speaker output, you're going to have the same power output regardless of your input. Now, the way that I have the headphone amplifier set up is to actually use in a desk setup like this, where it has RCA out of the back into studio monitors that are powered, these small little baby Genelecs. And then I have the dedicated LA90 for those towers in the back. Now those are SBS Ultra towers, those are about 8 ohms. And for the power output of this LA90, I think that is plenty even in a large room like this one. Now what this system allows me to do is have a ultra pure version of the sound for both a desk setup like this with headphones, IEMS, and studio monitors, and then also get over to the hi-fi system where I have the big speakers. Now there's a couple problems with this setup and a couple limitations with this setup, and these are some of the cons I want to talk about. One of the cons is that the speaker amplifier does not come with a remote. So any volume changing you want to do for the speakers out there are going to be, you're going to have to do it up here, which is going to be weird if you're sitting on a couch, which is over there. You know, that's a weird system. I do wish they added a remote to that. Now, it is notable that the D90 does come with a remote, which you can control volume, but that will control the whole system volume. Just keep that in mind. I do have a little bit of a internal discussion over use case here, and let me explain why. Now, the LA90, while it's a very, very well measuring amplifier, it only has about 110 watts into 4 ohms, which makes it, for the price, which is about $800, not the best or most powerful amplifier. Now, because of that, you're limited in use case. So it's not going to power all speakers, though it will power most, and it's not going to power all speakers in all rooms, although it should do most speakers in most rooms. So your options are either efficient speakers like these 8 ohm SVSs, or you could use more near field speakers. You could do like an LS50 Meta setup at a desk. I think that would be killer with this specific amplifier. But that already kind of adds a little bit of a notch into this stack where if you needed more power, this is probably not the place to get it. I would go with a dedicated power amplifier, just something with a little bit more juice if you really, really need a lot of power. Though I think that most people way overestimate the amount of power they need. I do think that this is probably sufficient for most speakers, even towers, bookshelves, things like that. But where the conflict for me comes in is when I'm talking about sort of that near field experience, because you could actually circumvent the cost of a lot of that by going with a really good pair of studio monitors. This is something that I brought up in the LA90 review, but this is a small Genelec. They make bigger ones. These are about $700 a pair. They're powered. They have DSP adjustments and all that stuff. And for a little 3-inch monitor, these things actually stomp pretty hard. It's kind of crazy, the amount of output you can get out of this. But let's say you got the LA90 and those LS50 Metas. That's about a, what, $2,300 system. You can get in my opinion, better sounding closed field monitors than that. There are the Newmans and the bigger Genelecs, and for under $2,600, you can get a pretty awesome system. So this to me it's a weird in-between device where it doesn't completely satisfy a general use case. It's very, very niche, and you're definitely going to have to fit that demographic of user if you want to get the most out of this thing. Otherwise, I actually think a lot of people should probably skip this. Another notable thing on those higher end Genelecs, especially if you go with the SAM line, is that they have some crazy DSP adjustments. They have like a little measurement microphone that can come with them to where they can really correct for your specific environment. And that shit really works. It's not a joke. Like, that stuff is really crazy. And I don't think enough audiophiles consider studio monitors at a desk, but good studio monitors, not things like Rockets, not the cheap stuff, but the good ones on the higher end are incredible sounding. And some monitors like the 8351B from Genelec have like some of the most incredible measurements from any speaker ever. They're crazy sounding. And I think that if you've got a good budget for it and you like listening to speakers at a desk, I would really consider them. You can do a lot. Even Genelec's lowest end model, which is this one, it still has DSP adjustments in the back so that you can actually do like a tabletop isolation where it sounds better just on a desk. There's also some bass adjustments and stuff. I really can't praise these enough. They're very good. Sorry for that slight tangent there. So for me, if you're just asking my opinion, the LA90 fits a weird circumstance where if you're at a desk and you're running bookshelf speakers, if you haven't bought any of them yet, if you don't already have them, I would probably consider monitors. But it's also weird because in a larger room or with more demanding speakers, I also don't really recommend getting that one. So it's got, again, very specific niche use case. Okay, so I should say that I've talked a lot about some of these devices. I've talked a shitload about the A90. I've talked a ton about the D90 SE. I love those devices. And I want that to come across that I wholeheartedly really, really enjoy them. There are some cons though. The A90 is probably one of the most flawless devices that I've come across for performance for me and use case. It's got basically everything that I would want, and it sounds the way that I like, and it doesn't really have any downsides for performance. It's incredibly clean on the measurement end. It's incredibly clean on the sound, like listening impressions end. And it's got the features and functionality that I would look for in an amplifier. It's got pre-outs, it's got a volume controlled out switch, it's got a lot of power, so it can power anything under the sun. But there is a new amplifier coming out called the A90 Discrete, which is a discrete amplifier that is sort of the slightly better version of this. And now it's in the mail and I haven't heard it yet, but everything that I've seen, it's got a little bit more power, a little bit better measurements in some areas, and some other audiophile things that are seeming like a little bit of fun. Now the A90 did just have a price drop to $450, so it's now $50 off. And the other one is $599, so it's $150 more. Once that gets in, we'll see if it's actually worth that additional cost. But while I like it, not everybody likes the super neutral sound that is basically not sonically characteristic at all. It sounds completely transparent, but not everybody likes that. Some people like a little bit more, let's say, bass influence or a little bit more energy in the treble response. Whatever you like, this may not be it. This is a dead neutral amplifier. So while that's a pro for me, that may be a con for you. A real con of the D90 is, while I think it fits well in the stack, and I don't know how much you'd spend just to have like this super uniform stack like this, but I think that the D90 does sound the same as some of their lower end models. Some of them, not all of them. That being said, again, the fitment with this stack is very good and the features are very, very good. The measurements are very, very good. I don't really give a shit about the MQA stuff. That's whatever. But if you wanted to save money, a cheaper DAC would probably be a good way to do it with this system. So this, like a lot of audio devices, ends up being one of those scenarios where for the right person, a system like this is going to be phenomenal. For me, it's really good. It allows me to have a very good baseline performance as a reviewer for not only my headphones, but also my studio monitors with the very clean RCA outputs of the A90. But the LA90 also allows me to have a very clean output to my speakers for comparative tests. But most people aren't reviewers, and most people can lean into their subjectivity a lot more than I feel like I'm allowed to. So for about $2,000, there's definitely more fun systems than this one sonically, but I do think that measurement-wise, spec-wise, and feature-wise, this is a pretty wide-ranging stack. And while it's not for everybody, for the right person, it's gonna be killer. That being said, I do want to talk about some things that I wish would be coming in the future that I think are missing right now. One, like I said, volume control for the LA90 would be awesome. Two would be some sort of inline tone control, sort of think of like the shit low-key kind of module that would go on here that would allow you to adjust frequencies would be amazing. I don't necessarily think that this next one is gonna show up, but I would love some sort of Frankenstein device that is all of these put together. So it's got the D90 balanced stack in it into an A90 or an A90 discrete headphone amplifier, but it also on the back end had speaker outputs that were basically the same as the LA90. Think of this like the shit Ragnarok competitor, but sort of updated for 2022, you know, with all the latest topping and FCA stuff and all that fun stuff. I think that would be an incredible device, especially if it could come in cheaper. Personally, I'd be okay with just a giant cube like this that had all of that with all the toggles and everything, and you could just set it on your desk, and that'd be all you would need for a very long time. I think that'd be cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Until the next video, my name's Josh, signing off. Peace.